Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining today's webinar, New Integrations for Smarter and Faster Cloud Adoption. Before we get started, I wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. First, today's webinar will be recorded, and a link to the recording will be emailed to you tomorrow morning. That is US time. Please be sure to ask any questions in the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll get to them at the end of the session. We'll have a live Q&A session from today's speakers. After we finish the webinar, you will also be prompted with a survey, and we'd like any feedback there. So without further ado, I'd like to present to you our two speakers, Alberto Gomez, who's the Director of Product Management for New Relic Infrastructure and also Cloud Integrations. And also speaking today, we have Ali Gerard, who's the Product Marketing Manager for New Relic Infrastructure. I'll go ahead and hand it over to Ali.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jackson. I'm going to go ahead and kick this off today and walk through kind of the high level of how New Relic is helping to enable our customers to move to the cloud more efficiently and effectively. And then the latter half of this webinar, I'm going to kick it over to Alberto, who's going to go into some details and demos of our new cloud integrations and features. So, just like any good story, there's a beginning, middle, and end to cloud migration. And at New Relic, we've broken these down into 3 distinct phases, including the plan, migrate, and run phase. And while this seems pretty straightforward, make no mistake that moving to the cloud is not easy and requires the right team, lots of patience, a good plan, and ultimately to really be successful, it requires comprehensive monitoring at each of these phases. So I want to talk a little bit about a story of one of our customers who recently went through a migration to AWS and learned the hard way of not bringing in monitoring early enough. So they prepared to move to the cloud and basically threw out their homegrown monitoring tool, chose New Relic and AWS, and began to move services to AWS following the standard methodology that deploy monitoring post-migration. What they found, though, is that when workloads had moved to AWS, the following 2 months, they were coming up with different complaints about how these services were actually performing. Why were the AWS services so terrible? At that point, an AWS senior professional services architecture went in to help, and after spending several weeks with them, the architect actually discovered that the company had already purchased New Relic, but just hadn't deployed it on the migrated apps. The architect went off script from the standard methodology and got permission from this customer, our mutual customer, to deploy New Relic APM on the apps that were running on AWS. So basically, once New Relic was deployed, the team saw that the issues were all in their code and the configurations were not in the AWS services. So they went from being frustrated with AWS to happy AWS customers overnight. But one of the main problems that we see is that they wasted a lot of time solving the issue that could have probably been prevented or spotted way ahead of time if they had done this before the migration actually occurred. And the funny thing is that there are a ton of stories like this across our entire customer base, and it can be prevented just by bringing in instrumentation earlier and taking the extremely short period of time to prevent bad things from happening during the migration. It's our belief in this sentiment that we want to get across in this webinar that this customer should have, could have, and retrospectively would have brought in New Relic in the beginning of this migration, not when it was already done. Now, since you joined this webinar, it's probably not a surprise to you that these challenges in moving to the cloud are very real, and by now you've heard about, or maybe even you've lived through the horrors of a failed migration. It's safe to say that most companies don't anticipate failure when embarking on this initiative, we're all promised the, faster deployment times, cost savings, etc. But the unfortunate reality is that if cloud migration isn't done correctly, and namely if it's done in absence of monitoring, the repercussions could have major financial implications, or the cloud migration could just fail entirely, which is represented here and is all too common. So, what constitutes a good migration, and how do you ensure that you're not one of these statistics? So it has to begin with actually understanding what gets migrated and what gets left behind, really knowing and acknowledging what your new architecture will look like when you're in the cloud. And at the highest level, it looks something like this. Your server hardware is gone, and now you have a new infrastructure and platform service. You've migrated pieces of the server OS, as well as important applications and any applications that may run in your customer browser or mobile devices. And understanding this is important because it allows us to really glean everything that needs to be monitored to be successful. And at the highest level, anything that's being migrated should be monitored. This is super imperative to have this information for the migrate phase of this process. And when it's being monitored, it allows you to understand things like customer experience, the overall application health and performance, things like how the EC2 instances and how the OS are performing, also to be able to track and understand different databases. So these are just some examples here represented on the right. There's a bunch more. And why this is so important is because without this intel, you wouldn't know if the last deploy just caused lag or downtime, or if somehow this is going to increase your AWS bill. So if you're looking at this and thinking, well, I already check a lot of these boxes and have monitoring for these systems, that's probably true. But what's also important about this is that it's all in one platform, or else you're going to end up with something that looks like this. Because the truth is, monitoring at these different layers exists in many forms. And if you're migrating to the public cloud, like platforms like AWS, Azure, Google, all have some level of monitoring and visibility. Additionally, there are a slew of infrastructure tools and point solutions that can give you some basic level monitoring, and application performance solutions are now readily available. Hopefully, if you're tuned into this webinar, you're using New Relic. But if you don't connect all of these systems, and if all of these different pieces don't have one place to live, it creates some major implications. Different people are being different pinged. Alerts are coming from all of these different systems that need to be looked after. There was a statistic in one of my earlier slides. It was from Gartner that said over 70% of infrastructure and operations teams will experience a skills gap by 2018. And to me, I look at that and just think, no wonder if they have to keep up with so many different systems and tools and processes, not only for actually moving everything, but for monitoring it. Of course, there's a skills gap because they're spending all of their time doing that. So one of the things that we are really excited about, and where we believe that New Relic is kind of leading this forefront, is this ability to instrument everything into one platform. And this is kind of what it looks like here at the highest level with our various products. So there's visibility into each of the layers that we just discussed about. And ultimately, what this provides is a single point of view and platform to monitor all of these different phases, all of these different services, bringing everything into one point of view so you can move to the cloud more efficiently and effectively. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Alberto, who's going to talk to you at a little bit of a deeper level and go through some of our new cloud integrations. We're super excited about this. We have over 40 cloud integrations, and that's just since we launched infrastructure in late 2016. So we've made some incredible strides with our infrastructure integrations, and Alberto's going to walk you through what those are and take you through a demo.
Thanks, Ali. And yeah, before we get into the infrastructure monitoring, I just wanted to mention first, like this whole stack that we can offer to our customers, like going from creating synthetic checks for your browser or your mobile, or monitoring your browser and your mobile end user experiences, and then monitoring all the underlying applications that support your customer experience, like all the backend applications, all the backend systems, all the APIs that you're running, as well as being able to put in the same platform the visibility into the underlying infrastructure and how the underlying infrastructure and the application performance monitoring affect to each other. That's amazing, right? So that when we bring together the power of the cloud, and we can add into the same platform both all the user experience metrics together with synthetically generated checks, together with the application performance monitoring, and then all the underlying infrastructure, regardless if that infrastructure is on-prem or it's on the cloud, that's pretty cool. It's like having exactly what you need to move into the cloud. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. So how we move to the cloud and how we help customers move to the cloud. And it's because the cloud can be tricky. So there's like a huge amount of awesome things about the cloud. Like it can help you move much faster. So I still remember those days, and it was not so long away when I was making like quarterly deployments in production. It was only like 5-6 years back. So recently, we just got to the point where we're doing 1,000 deployments in production a day. So that level of flexibility can only be achieved by the combination of cloud and using cloud services and measuring efficiency of your cloud services together with the right monitoring tools, right? If you don't have the right monitoring tools, you're just driving at 1,000 miles per hour in like a tricky road, right? So it's like you really need to control this power in the cloud, not only in terms of performance of the different services that you're using, but also in terms of cost, which is like the drawback that you always have with the cloud, right? So it helps you move much faster than before, but managed cost cloud can become one of the trickiest things ever, right? Especially if you're running a large organization. If you're running a small organization, it can be tricky, but in the end, you know what resources you're using and you can have everything under control. But when you're talking about large organizations, keeping track of underutilized instances, keeping track of unattached instances, it's a really complicated thing. And especially, you need a platform that can help you validate and measure the transition. So from the point where you have no services in the cloud, till the point that you're hybrid, till the point that you might be in the end like cloud native, right? So you need the right monitoring tools in place. And to what Ali was saying before, it's really about getting the right tools in place and being able to break the silos between teams, which is very important. Socialize the data that you have and be able to share the data and have it in a single pane of glass so people can access these data regardless of where they are and what's their department and where are the eyeballs and what their responsibilities are. You want to share and socialize these data with your teams. Having said that, I'm gonna move a little bit more into the detail now and talk a little bit about what we've released in in this last quarter. Actually, it was February when we announced the winter release. So, and we added like a few integrations for Amazon, like Elastic Beanstalk, which has been longly requested by our customers, simple email service, and auto scaling. That's for AWS. We currently have more than 30 integrations with AWS. Some of them are CloudWatch based, some of them are CloudWatch logs based. Then we added quite a few integrations for Azure, which today have around 10 integrations for Azure. We're planning to invest more in Azure. So we just released App Service, SQL database, storage, and load balancer. And we have a new rising star in Google Cloud Platform, which has been largely requested for our customer base, from our customer base. And we, like a couple of quarters back, decided to start investing in just getting support for Google Cloud Platform more natively, and being able not only to retrieve the platform as a service metrics that we get in Stackdriver, but also like we are doing for Amazon, like we're doing for Azure, being able to get all the metadata of the VMs, being able to get all the tags, labels, resource groups, security groups, all the stuff that's surrounding your architecture, together with the configuration of those services or those like entities that you're using to run your applications in the cloud. So right now we are summing up more than 40 integrations. So just last year we had barely like 10 integrations, and over the course of this year we've been able to add more than 30 integrations overall and 3 clouds across our New Relic platform. That's something that, of course, New Relic is going to keep on investing on, and it's something where we truly believe this is critical for customer success and getting visibility of sorry, not only your application and your infrastructure as a service and your on-prem infrastructure, but also being able to visualize and observe and alert on the different platform as a service that you're using is key for your success, right? You need to have like a holistic view, a very comprehensive view of how your UX is doing, how your application is doing, how your infrastructure is doing, regardless if it's in the cloud or you're using services or using infrastructure as a service, or if it's on-prem, right? So that's our objective. Having said that, of course, we mentioned that we have like more than 30 integrations with Amazon, more than 10 in Azure, and now just starting with Google Cloud Platform. Those integrations range from RDS, Dynamo, Lambda in Amazon, as well as billing. We truly believe that billing needs to be considered as a performance metric, as well as any of the performance metrics that you guys have into the dashboard. We are firm believers that you need to be aware if something is spiking in CPU, the same as if something is spiking in cost for your service. You need to make your teams aware of how much is the stuff that they're running costing to your company, and how much the application that you have is running for is costing for your company, right? So you need to make always balance. You need to think about the balance between cost and benefit when moving to the cloud, and keep a close eye into the costs. That's one of the top worries of our customers that are moving to the cloud. Is like on one side they're able to deploy many times a day, be able to use infrastructure real fast, automate tons of things, and deliver value to their customers at the speed of light. But on the other side, cost control is a challenge. Cool. Having said that, we're going to move into another feature that we proudly announced in the winter release, which is basically a feature that allows you to control the stuff that you have, the integrations that you have in your New Relic account very granularly. So it really helps you configure the settings for each integration to monitor exactly what you want to monitor from your AWS account. So just put a typical use case here in those slides of what's going on with our customers, right? So our customers might have an AWS account where they have, or multiple AWS accounts. I just put one for simplifying that, where they have like pretty much everything there, right? They have their production environments, the staging environments, testing environments, and so on and so forth. So with these service data control that we put together, customers are now able to route some traffic into a given New Relic account. Like here, I just put the example that you have your New Relic account for production stuff, and you have your New Relic account for staging. And you can now configure, like, all right, so from EC2 and RDS, with the tag value production, move the data into a New Relic account for production. And from EC2 and RDS, with the tag value staging, move the data into the staging, into New Relic account staging. So that we are doing not only at the account level, but we are also doing at the service level. So we're also doing at each integration level. So you can have a very, very granular control of where the data flows and at what period this data flows. Another thing that we all added as well is like the capacity to control the polling periods for both metrics. So that's performance metrics coming for CloudWatch or Stackdriver or Azure Monitor, as well as being able to control the period where we go and fetch the inventory data. So the inventory data I'm going to demo afterwards, but it's really the configuration of your services that we can fetch as fast as 5 minutes in a period of 5 minutes, or we can fetch as long as in a period of 4 hours or an hour, right? So the inventory really helps you just control and make yourself aware of the different changes that can happen into your cloud services. But we'll see that in the demo in a second. All right, having mentioned that, let me just jump into the demo. It's gonna go here into New Relic account, infrastructure account. I'll go full screen for that. And for those who are not familiar with the New Relic infrastructure, so New Relic infrastructure is really the youngest of the New Relic product family. It's been around for a year, so we GA'd a little bit more than a year. We GA'd infrastructure in November 2016, and it has a bunch of stuff. But I'm not going to get into the detail of host, network, storage, and processes monitoring, but that's basically the data that we get from the infrastructure agent that you might install in a virtual machine. So all the data for host, network storage, and processes flows into New Relic infrastructure like that, as well as the inventory data that I was mentioning before, right? So inventory data is, again, all the configuration that you may have of all your different cloud services. But just to put a sample there, so we have the configuration for the different rules that you have configured in your application load balancers, right? So you see here that you have like 2 application load balancer, that's the ARN, and those are the actions that you have configured into those ARNs. So why is that important? Is because keeping track of this configuration, we will generate an event that you can alert on if that configuration changes. The reason behind that is because basically it can happen that most of the times you change something or your automation template it has a bug, and you change something that you were not planning to change, and suddenly all the performance of your platform just goes down, and you need to understand that this specific event and this specific configuration change really is what made your performance go down, right? So without tracking these configuration issues, it will be very complicated for you to correlate what happened in your account compared to why the performance went down. Having said that, I'm gonna go into integrations now and just do a quick work around integrations. A quick walk around, sorry. So as we mentioned, we have Azure integrations, we have Google Cloud Platform integrations. We also have on-host integrations. It's not the purpose of this webinar to talk about on-host integrations, but we have a bunch of on-host integrations, as well as StatsD. So if you want to use StatsD to send us like performance metrics, you can do that. Deep diving a little bit into Amazon Web Services. So we have as many integrations as more than 30, as I mentioned. So ALB, autoscaling, API gateway, building, CloudFront, CloudTrail, blah, 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 blah. So we have a bunch of integrations just to help you in a point-and-click manner start monitoring those integrations. So once you have enrolled one account, one AWS account into New Relic, after that, you just can go and point and click on whatever you want us to start monitoring. And once you click it, we'll start monitoring. So what we do is we just generate like a templated dashboard, like a reference dashboard that will help you, just let me just show you one, that will help you just understand the metrics that we are fetching for you, right? So you can really, understand what metrics you are fetching, and you can afterwards, create your own dashboard to, really deep dive into what specifically interests you or interests your different teams, right? So again, talking a little bit now about, the configuration feature. As I mentioned, you can go as granular as for each service configure these things, right? So like the metrics data polling interval, as I mentioned, these are the performance metrics that you can configure, as well as the inventory data polling interval, which is really the configuration data for the different services that you're running. You can do that, again, very granularly per service. And you can configure like, all right, so I want the fetch data only from the US East and West regions, right? And I want the fetch data only coming from the tag key, I don't know, like, like the tag value production, let's say, right? So this way, what that will do, if I just submit this thing, it will just start fetching data for that subset. So again, what that helps you do is fetching the data, the very specific data that you need from your AWS account to flow into the specific New Relic account where you need that data to be operative. So again, I mean, you can configure as many AWS accounts, as many Azure accounts, and as many Google Cloud Platform accounts as you want into a single New Relic account, and everything will end up in insights in a single pane of glass. So you can build your own dashboards, you can run your own queries to really deep dive into the aggregate of all the different data that you're fetching from all the AWS or cloud accounts that you have, as well as narrow down into a specific account, a specific instance, a specific like performance metric for that instance. Real quick as well, as I mentioned that, and I think it's relevant, the billing integration is what makes you, or what helps you keep control of how much that stuff is costing us, right? And make our teams aware of how much that stuff is costing us. So again, what we're doing here, it's two things really. So on one side, we're pulling all the cost metrics from your account. And on the other side, we're pulling all the budgets that you can generate to map the different applications that you run into encapsulated into a single body. So once you do that, we can control, the different cost for the different applications that you run, see the actual amount, put a limit on your budget for this specific application or infrastructure piece. And some cool things that we do with AWS, you can get the forecasted spend after each release for this specific budget, right? So you can alert on your forecasted against your budget limit in order to say, all right, so the last release that we made, it's really going to cost us like 10 times more than the budget limit that we have. So something's wrong, right? We need to look into that. And that's kind of what I was mentioning before, right? So making your teams aware of the costs as well as the performance metrics that you have is key. And you need to transfer that knowledge into your teams and help them really understand, cost, or make them understand cost as a performance metric as well. Cool. So that was, like, in a nutshell, everything we had for you today. I'm going to get back to the slides now. And yep, and then move it into Q&A.
Alberto, thanks so much. Yeah, and I'm sure you could go super deep with that demo. I just want to remind everyone, if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them. We're going to try and get through as many as possible. I know we have a lot of questions, but just feel free to submit them. If we can't get to them on the air, we'll follow up with you via email. So definitely feel free to ask as many as you'd like. First, to start off, can we monitor SAP on cloud using New Relic?
I guess I'll take this one. So we can monitor, of course, all the infrastructure as a service. So any like virtual machine that you're running in SAP, we can monitor for sure. So yes, that's a yes. But we are not supporting like specific platform as a service yet from SAP.
Great, thank you. So just a question about licensing. You mentioned just going into and capturing some resolution on AWS. How does it work for cost? Is it by metrics collected? Am I paying by event? How does that work?
Yeah, I can jump in on this one. So our licensing, we collect all of the metrics from AWS, and then they're rooted in, filtered by.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute talking. Apologies. Yeah, so basically what we're doing is just yeah, so we are basically fetching all the data from AWS. We can filter on the fetching on the requests that we're doing, and all the data from the different AWS accounts and from the different services that we are fetching are we just basically bringing into New Relic and adding into your account, so you can query. You can query this data. So there's two natures of data. Well, actually three. There's like metrics, performance metrics, operative events, and then there's inventory, which is what we mentioned before, which is basically like configuration data.
And just regarding those metrics that are captured, specifically about AWS, is 5 minutes the highest resolution, or can I do it every minute, every 30 seconds, every second? I mean, how granular can we get?
So right now, by default, we're limiting to 5 minutes. The reason for that is because what we are seeing is that for most of our customers, when you start getting like a fairly large infrastructure in Google Cloud, you start hitting the API rate limits from AWS pretty soon. So if we go every minute to fetch data, and you have, let's say, like 200 instances, you'll be reaching the API limits. So that's why we go every 5 minutes and we fetch all the data points that happened in the last 5 minutes for all the instances you have. So this way we just by default save you 5 times the cost in CloudWatch, as well as avoiding you hitting the API rate limits.
Great. So
I see a good question from Fahad there.
Yeah, he says, I'm new to New Relic infrastructure. To monitor our web apps, we integrate New Relic agents. So how does New Relic monitor hosted services like AWS, RDS, S3, etc.? Do we need to install an agent?
So the answer for that is no. So this is really a cloud-to-cloud integration. So it's New Relic integrating with AWS and integrating with Azure and integrating with GCP. We do all the authentication so cloud-to-cloud authentication, so we can start fetching metrics. So just an example, you mentioned RDS, so we have like 2 integrations for RDS only in infrastructure, as well as and that does not require an agent, so we can pull the data from RDS as well as we can pull the data RDS as the service itself, and just to measure performance of the RDS service, as well as we can pull data from RDS enhanced monitoring, which is really what's giving you the health and the performance of the operating system that the instance is running, the DB instance is running, right? So if the DB instance is running out of memory, or the DB instance is running out of disk space, or it is running a process that's consuming all the resources from the machine, you'll be able to alert based on that. And that's without using any agent installation. It's just a cloud-to-cloud integration.
So with regard to that, what are the prerequisites for AWS integrations? I mean, what do I need on the AWS side? What do I need on my side? How do we get started, essentially?
So it's pretty easy, actually. So you just need to create a role in AWS and give our new Relic account permissions to access to the different services that you want us to monitor. You can do like a generic read access. For us, we only need the read access to monitor all those services. And then you can get as granular as you want in terms of providing permissions to this role. You can go like and give us exactly the permission that we need, and we have documented in our documentation portal for each service that we run. Or you can give us again like a generic read permission. Once we have that, and that works the same in Azure and more or less the same in GCP. There's like subtle differences. Of course, in Azure, it's more about the subscription. You create an application, and you give permission to New Relic in that application. And in GCP, it's really an OAuth integration. But it's really naturally the same thing. So you just give us permission to access your data and the subset of your platform that you want us to monitor, and we can then start pulling data out of your cloud account.
Interesting. Alberto, there are questions here about, AWS CloudWatch, and, can you compare and contrast what the differences are between, some of the New Relic integrations and what AWS CloudWatch offers? Why do I need this on top of CloudWatch?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so it's really what we were discussing before, right? So first is the easy, in New Relic, you have the ability to query data and to build your own dashboards and to generate dashboard based on queries, which is extremely powerful. You can do a lot of things based on that. You can alert based on the different tagging systems that you have. You can build a dashboard based on metadata, and you can do really a ton of stuff only for like the specifics of infrastructure. But also on top of that, the great thing that you can do with New Relic is, as we mentioned, put everything together and break those silos. Like you can put the UX data together with the applications data together with the underlying infrastructure data, and really be able to move top, bottom, and bottom up across your entire stack and measure and see performance for the different things and different layers that you have. From there's like a 3-second delay in this response time in that mobile application. Oh, and it's maybe because you have misconfigured global tables in DynamoDB, and you have just messed up with the configuration. I'm just going to Japan to fetch data, and I'm actually in Frankfurt in Europe, right? So that's really what's the power app. So first, in terms of bringing the data together in the multi-cloud or multi-account and multi-region strategy, you want to have all that stuff in the same platform and be able to query and manage and alert that data in a very easy and in a very easy manner.
Great, thank you. Just a reminder, if you'd like to submit a question, please feel free. We have a lot of questions coming in, so we won't get to all of them today, but if you do submit a question, we'll be happy to answer it via email if we don't get to it on the air. So please feel free to ask any and everything. We'll try to get to it if we can. Alberto, can you kind of expand on what's the difference between APM and infrastructure? I feel like we have a lot of visibility with APM alone. What's the value add with doing infrastructure?
Yeah, so that's a great question as well, right? So, well, APM gives you like visibility on the application itself. So we were talking about databases before, and there's a million reasons why an RDS database can go slow. And what you can probably see from APM is like, all right, so this specific query is slow. You'll be able to spot that, and your time to detection is going to be probably like 5 to 10 seconds. You're going to be able to see that very quickly. And then what's infrastructure is answering is, all right, so this slow query was slow because there was this disk was swapping, or there was something going on in that specific RTS instance to make this query be slow. So that's really like the main difference. There's network issues as well that can happen that you might want to be able to understand. In APM, you cannot deep dive into, all right, so what's going on with the network, whilst with infrastructure, you can deep dive into, all right, so what processes is this EC2 instance running, what's going on with the network, and what's going on with this specific host. Is it healthy? Is it not healthy? So let's say it gives you the layer of the underlying infrastructure performance, which can help you really see. And let me just show that and not talk through it, because it's always better to see real software than talking. So it can really give you that, which is extremely powerful in my opinion. So we're probably out of time, but which is health maps, right? Health maps can actually put together the performance of your host and the performance of your applications in the same pane of glass. So we are now looking at the performance of the host, and the red dot here is the performance of my applications, right? I can change the view just to make it the other way around, like look into applications instead of looking at host first. So it really depends on what your team is interested in looking after, right? So this way we can just, and this is like a high density view, so I can just go deep with that, grow, like put it in a wall screen or whatever, and just be able to understand, all right, so there's two applications that seem to go south. There's alerts being fired, Apdex is down, whatever, and the hosts are healthy, right? But it could be the other way around. It can be like the host isn't healthy, the application starts to go so-so, and you can immediately, act or make an action to actually avoid this application to go south, basically. So that's really what's the value of putting together the two worlds of APM and infrastructure.
Alberto, I'll just throw you one last question here. I know we're running out of time, and I appreciate you going through and showing health map and sort of the value add between APM and infrastructure. Just before we go here, again, if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them. We're just running out of time here, but we'll be happy to answer them via email if you'd like. So just briefly, Alberto, can you tell me how you monitor on-prem equipment and what integrations or protocols are supported? How do we, you talked a lot about on cloud. How do we do it if we have some bare metal stuff?
Yeah, so for bare metal, we really are working on what we call on-host integrations, and we also have the new Relic infrastructure agent. And apart from that, and I'll explain those a little bit more in detail in a second, but apart from that, we have like StatsD integration. which allows you to send data through StatC. And we also have an infrastructure SDK that can allow yourself a monitoring experience for whatever service you're running. So we have customers that have been, I've been using the infrastructure SDK to build integrations with IoT things, with robots, like with crazy things, and it's really like on the infrastructure agent side and the on-host side. The agent is meant to be installed in virtual machines or hardware as a service, like infrastructure as a service. And then host integrations are like those integrations like, I don't know, Apache, Nginx, like Redis, like Elastic Cache, like those integrations that you really need to deep dive into what is this piece of software doing and how it is behaving. Apart from the this is the underlying host, and this is how the underlying host is behaving and it's performing based on the New Relic infrastructure agent. The on-host integrations give you that plus of going a little bit farther down the line and saying, all right, so your cache hit is whatever percent, your configuration of Redis cache is whatever, and you can deep dive into how the performance of the Redis cache is right now if you're running this Redis cache. So it's really, if you're operating that software instead of using a service, that's what makes the difference between us doing an on-host integration, which is you're operating that software, or doing a cloud integration, which is basically a managed service that a cloud provider is operating for you. So, but that's like the line that divide our thinking about like on-host and cloud.
Cool. Thank you so much. I know we're out of time here. Again, thank you for everybody who submitted your questions. If we didn't get to them, we will answer them via email. Rob, Oleg, Megan, Mark, Miguel, and everyone else. I mean, I see a lot of questions here, so we'll get to you via email. Don't forget that there's also a survey afterwards, so feel free to drop any additional questions if you think of them after we close the webinar here. And thank you for your attendance, and I hope you learned something. Alberto, Ali, thank you so much for your presenting today.
Thank you. And you can always make a free trial of New Relic infrastructure and judge by yourselves. Cool. Thank you.